Well, good afternoon. I want to quickly just say how important this day is for our faculty, staff, and students, and I want to give you all a quick shout out to say I'm so proud of you and the work that we're doing here at Lincoln University, and we are honored today by the Secretary's visit. Mr. Secretary, on behalf of Lincoln University of Missouri, I am honored to welcome U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Thomas J. Vilsack to our campus, a two-time presidential appointee chosen to lead the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Former state senator, Iowa governor, and mayor, Secretary Vilsack is dedicated to improving the American economy and strengthening rural and historically underserved communities. He understands the challenges that exist for our nation's small towns and family farms. Through his leadership, he has proven that he is working for all producers. Secretary Vilsack's visit is particularly significant to Lincoln University, founded in 1866 by the 62nd and 65th Colored Infantry, who struggled and fought to provide freed African Americans with access to education. He and the Biden-Harris administration have focused on partnerships to ensure opportunities are shared in an equitable manner for minorities in agriculture. Addressing inequities is an imperative conversation for our country today. The imbalance of financial support for the 19 historically black colleges and universities recognized as 1890 land-grant institutions has long been documented. Over a 15-year period, our university used nearly $43 million of its core funding to ensure that we could draw down the federal match provided to 1890 institutions. This shortfall has hindered research, our ability to recruit and provide higher education access to deserving students, something Lincoln has been known for since its founding. Despite this significant financial challenge, Lincoln remains committed to fulfilling our responsibility of supporting rural communities and to making a global impact through our research and outreach. Through Lincoln's innovative Small Farmers Outreach Program, we work directly with minority, underserved, and small farmers in 47 Missouri counties to address their problems and improve their incomes. Our faculty, staff, research, and extension teams are tackling critical agriculture challenges by promoting smart and precision agriculture. Our climate team's work is having a positive impact on watershed management, soil health, and carbon sequestration, and we are proud of their success. To accomplish equity and eliminate barriers, we must increase university enrollment in agriculture and provide financial aid to underserved and minority students. Lincoln is seeing this happen through Secretary Vilsack's and the USDA's commitment to increasing funding for the 1890 USDA National Institute of Food and Agriculture Fluoride Scholarship Program. I want to thank Secretary Vilsack for meeting with our 1890 scholars this morning to hear how they plan to make a difference. They are already at work creating innovative solutions for sustainability, improved food safety and security, natural resource conservation, new revenue stream development, and more. Thank you for choosing Lincoln University today and for your support of scholarships in agriculture education. Together, we can foster the next generation of agriculture leaders for the great state of Missouri, the United States of America, and the world. Secretary Vilsack.
President Mosley, thank you very much for a kind introduction and a great history lesson about this university, and also about the important role that land grants across the board play in America today, and the need for continued funding and financing of Lincoln University and other land grant universities, which we definitely support, and which the President's budget in FY22 and 23, I'm confident, supports. And it's just great to be with everyone here today. I had a wonderful opportunity to meet some students and to see some of the great work that's being done at Lincoln University earlier today. Very impressed with the work that's being done on climate. Very impressed with the work that's being done on sustainable building materials, which I saw an opportunity as well to learn a little bit about ways in which we can eat more healthily All of that activity is taking place here at Lincoln. And it is really a fitting place, if you think about it, to launch a major initiative. Universities are places that honor tradition, but also challenge us to think anew about ourselves and the world around us. I know this university, Lincoln University, is dedicated to educating the next generation of new leaders and thinkers in agriculture. As President Mosley indicated, I met the 1890 scholars, and what a tremendous array of individuals coming from big cities and small towns with an interest in agriculture. And this university is named after the founder of the Department of Agriculture. It was Abraham Lincoln who proposed in 1862 the establishment of the People's Department. A department that he felt was dedicated, as is the case with land-grant universities, to the extension of knowledge and information, helping our farmers and our ranchers be more productive. It was President Lincoln, at a time of great civil unrest, who warned us and cautioned us about the importance of staying united as a country. And in his second inaugural address, he said it this way: "As our case is new, so must we think anew and act anew. We cannot escape history. We will be remembered in spite of ourselves." He said that at a time of great challenge for this country and great opportunity to reunite the country. Well, I speak today to you all at another time of great challenge. A challenge that's presented by a changing climate, which we've all seen the results of. Unprecedented storms, extensive droughts, horrific wildfires, all connected to climate. And there's probably no group of Americans who understand and see it more than our farmers, ranchers, and producers. They've seen it, they feel it, and they've been hurt by it. 19 of the hottest years on record have occurred since 2000. And it's not just climate that's changing, it's also markets and consumers that are changing. They see what's going around the world, and consumers are becoming more and more interested in knowing where their food comes from and how it was produced. And markets are responding by making sure that people are given information about climate-smart commodities. They're selling and marketing the concept of, if you use your consuming dollar, you'll be able to be assured that you're helping the environment and not hurting it. President Biden has challenged all of American agriculture and his Department of Agriculture to respond to this great challenge and to listen to the market and consumers. It's his expectation that we provide, in the United States, global leadership in embracing the challenge and the opportunity of climate change. And he's challenged us to work collaboratively together to reduce emissions connected to agriculture in half by 2030 and to net zero by 2050. He wants us to acknowledge the obvious, which is that our farmers, ranchers, and forested landowners are partners in this initiative. They historically have been dedicated to good stewardship. It's his idea, his view, that what we do should be voluntary and should be incentive-based. And our strategy should be based on those two principles. So we began to work last year to create this strategy of how to deal with this amazing challenge we have and this extraordinary opportunity. We recognize that we have a wide array of conservation programs that can be tailored and targeted to supporting climate-smart practices, the kinds of practices that students here at Lincoln University are learning about. We looked at our CRP program, that's our Conservation Reserve Program, which idles land for a period of time. And we asked the question, how can we focus it, how can we encourage it on highly erodible land, how can we take it from its historic low of around 20 million acres and build it back up? And one of the strategies we focused on was grasslands, and the importance of investing and providing incentives for grasslands to participate in this initiative. And we saw a great response. 1.9 million acres of the 5.3 million acres added to the program in just a single year. We looked at our Regional Conservation Partnership Program. That's really focused on watersheds. As you are here at Lincoln University, you understand the necessity of focusing on larger landscapes. And we are encouraging partnerships and collaborations and focusing on climate-smart practices in those large landscape and watershed scale projects. We've invested over $405 million in 100 projects targeted and focused on climate. We've used our Conservation Innovation Grant Program to think outside the box and to encourage folks to think about ways in which these resources can be creatively and innovatively used. Over $20 million committed to that. We embrace the notion of cover crops. Even our risk management agency, the one that operates our crop insurance program, said, hey, we can be part of this. We can provide financial incentives for folks who, notwithstanding the drought, can embrace cover crops. Over 12.2 million acres enrolled in this program received a premium, over $60 million in the pockets of farmers who invested in cover crops. And now we have the Farmers for Soil Health Initiative, the Soybean Association, the Soil Institute, and many others, who are working with us because we believe we're just getting started on the cover crops. We believe we can double the number of cover crops. In fact, we believe we can get to 30 million acres by 2030. So one pillar is using our existing conservation programs. Another pillar of this strategy was to make sure that farmers have the tools, the ability to understand what's going on in on their land and be able to adapt and adopt practices and procedures to take full advantage. You're doing some of that work here at Lincoln University. You're helping to develop the tools and the knowledge base that will enable farmers to do a better job. And we've been working hard at USDA to create those tools. Let me give you a couple examples. Tools that are based on the latest science, peer-reviewed, things that are valid. We've got our Common Farm program, which is a program that allows folks to estimate the impact of greenhouse gas reductions by certain practices. We've got the GraceNet program, which is allowing farmers to adopt better management practices as they try to enhance carbon sequestration and storage, reducing emissions and promoting sustainability. And now we're creating the ruminant farm system model, which is simulating whole farm activities and the impact that commitment to climate smart practices can have on the environment and on the economic bottom line for producers. And it wasn't just farming and ranching, it was also the notion that on farms and ranches we can create the next wave of feedstocks for biofuels. Tremendous challenge coming from President Biden to create an aviation biofuel. 36 billion gallons of drop-in aviation fuels to allow our planes to fly. I don't know about you folks, I kind of get the electric car thing. You know, you get in the car and if by chance the battery runs down, you pull off to the side of the road, you get your cell phone, you go for it. If you're in an airplane, the battery wears out. How exactly is that going to work? So I think it is important for us to have a biofuel as we transition to the next iteration of transportation fuels. And Lincoln University, with its hemp research, will be in the middle of all that. So research and focus on renewable energy and feedstocks and on fuels, another pillar to this better climate environment. And it's not just agriculture and forestry and renewable energy, but it's also our forests. We recently announced a 10-year commitment to reduce the risk of these horrific fires. I mean, we can do everything possible on the land and on our farms and ranches, but if our forests continue to burn at the rate they've been burning, a lot of carbon is going to go back up into the atmosphere. So it is important for us to have as a pillar better forest management. So we're now faced with looking at what else could, how could we think anew? How could we act anew? How could we accept the climate challenge and the opportunity side of that challenge? How can we understand and appreciate what markets want and need and what consumers are looking for and be able to help them? How can we make sure that farming is more profitable? And this is a very important component of this effort. Because you see, 89.6% of American farms today do not generate the majority of income for the farm family that's operating a farm. Now just think about that for just a second. That means that those farm families have to have off-farm income. maybe one job, maybe two jobs, maybe three jobs, to be able to afford to continue to farm, which is what they want to do, which is what they love to do. So we can do better, and we have to do better. So that's what brings me here today. As we focused on this issue, the first thing we did was to think anew. We reached out to folks and we said, what do you think over the last year? We talked to stakeholders across the board, farmers, ranchers, producers, environmental groups, conservation groups. We solicited written comments to how could we approach this slightly differently? How could we accelerate the adoption of these practices that we know work? We talked to policymakers. The chairs and ranking members of the Ag Committee were very helpful in giving advice and direction. We paid attention as the Senate passed the Growing Climate Solutions Act, and as it now awaits action in the House, because we know that inherent in that act is an effort not only to have USDA be helpful, but specifically to make sure that that help is also provided to small and mid-sized operators. That isn't just for large-scale agriculture, production agriculture, and commercial agriculture. It's for those folks who, in a small way, but when aggregated together, can have a very powerful impact in helping to deal with this challenge and seizing the opportunity. And we also applied the equity lens. President Moses' comment. We saw the need for us to make sure that the underserved producers in this country were also part and parcel of this effort. It's going to take all of us, and we need to make sure we reach out. We heard from the Food and Agriculture Climate Alliance, major ag companies, organizations, and businesses, as well as major farm groups, the Farm Bureau, the National Farmers Union, commodity groups, major ag and conservation groups as well, Environmental Defense Fund. They came to us and they simply said, look, you can help us. You can get us to the point where we can accelerate the use of these practices. You can help us create climate-smart commodities, but to do so, we need large-scale pilots. We need large demonstration projects. We need a wholesale adoption of climate-smart practices, and we need to measure and verify the impact, not just on individual farms or on small groups of farms, but on large numbers of farms. And with that information, we can then determine how to establish the standard for climate-smart commodities, and we can begin to meet that market and consumer demand. And in doing so, we can create a higher value product for our farmers, ranchers, and producers, create more income for them, and allow them to fully participate in private carbon market activities, private water quality market activities. But it's expensive. It requires resources to adopt these practices. And farmers with tight budgets simply are not in a position today to do so. So the expectation was that the Department of Agriculture would respond. And the reality is we have a long history of market facilitation and development of agriculture and forestry products. I think this makes us uniquely positioned to help address this challenge of climate change in partnership with landowners and producers. So that's why I'm here today at Lincoln University, to announce the launch of the Partnerships for Climate Smart Commodities. It's why I'm here today to say that we are now in a position at the USDA to begin accepting project applications for this new climate smart commodity opportunity. It's designed specifically to expand markets for U.S. agricultural products and forestry products through voluntary deployment of conservation practices that will lead to the production of these climate smart commodities. It's another pillar, a new pillar, if you will, in this overall strategy to address climate, meeting the President's goal, responding to market demand, and improving income for producers. We know that consumers and retailers here at home have an interest in purchasing commodities produced using climate smart agriculture and forestry practices. We know global markets are beginning to place an increasingly higher value on climate smart and forestry products, agriculture and forestry products. And we know there's a wide range of market-based approaches that are already starting to occur in the private marketplace, making opportunities for our producers to add value and create revenue streams that haven't existed before for our farmers. Now, as with anything new, there are going to be questions. Do the practices work as intended? Are the benefits real? Are they having an impact? How do we know if they're having an impact? Well, we need to be prepared to answer those questions. And so as part of our effort, we're also going to focus on tracking our progress, of understanding the benefits of these improved practices on the climate. We're going to require these projects who are seeking our assistance to accurately measure and track the benefits of producing these commodities and the climate gains made for agriculture and forestry from this effort in order for it to reach its highest potential. And obviously there's a role for land-grant universities in that effort. And we need to invest in greenhouse gas measurement, monitoring and verification systems that provide credibility while also working better for producers and landowners who currently face major barriers in this area. And we intend to work, and we hope our partners will intend to work, with research agencies, land-grant universities, and other innovators to quantify, monitor, and verify the climate benefits of these projects based on sound, peer-reviewed science. Well, lots of innovation is occurring in this space, and I recognize that. And we encourage the use of these innovative approaches, while also making use of USDA's own peer-reviewed methods and tools. We've invested, as I said earlier, heavily in the underlying science behind these existing tools. But these partnerships are in a position to test them at scale, to build on them, and to improve them. We're hoping a wide range of public and private entities will come together to develop pilot projects that seek to deploy climate-smart practices across numerous farms, ranches, and forested land. And we're looking to cover an inclusive, broad set of folks from across agriculture and forestry. Eligible entities looking for these grants can span anywhere from farmer groups to counties and towns, state governments to tribal governments, small businesses and nonprofit organizations, public and private institutions of higher education, including minority-serving institutions. And these partners will help to develop plans to implement these climate-smart practices and to measure, monitor, and verify the climate gains. I think we'll find that the successful proposals will be those that aggregate farmers, come up with innovative, producer-friendly ways to do the measurement, monitoring, and verification of greenhouse gas benefits. Now here's a really important point that I want to emphasize. And that is that we're doing everything we can across the department to instill equity in all of our decisions. Equity is going to play a critical role in this effort as well. That means we want to make sure that all projects funded through this opportunity meaningfully include small or historically underserved producers. We want to make sure that while we drive climate benefits, we're also driving forward our other priorities of equity and ensuring opportunity for all. We can't be successful in this if we're not inclusive. We want to make sure that this opportunity is reflective of the diversity of American agriculture as well. That means it has to be available to producers of all sizes, all methods, all locations, all types of production. Our goal will be to fund a portfolio of projects that will include a wide range of agriculture and forestry operations, from cropland to specialty crops, to livestock, to forestry and rangeland. The diversity of producers and landowners needs to be large and small. We also want to ensure that our approach includes early adopters, those innovators who've been out front, who've led the efforts to establish innovative conservation practices on the lands they manage and own. So let me tell you how exactly this funding opportunity will work. USDA will provide grants, and these are not loans, these are grants, to partners through a competitive process to implement these pilot projects. The projects have to incentivize producers to adopt production and marketing practices that will ensure that the agricultural commodity has climate-smart properties. They must also have a plan to measure, monitor, and verify the carbon and greenhouse gas benefits associated with those practices. And finally, these projects must also address how they're going to go about helping to develop markets that will promote the resulting climate-smart commodity generated from these practices. Now in practice, this might look, for example, like a group of small farmers working with a nonprofit to implement and quantify climate-smart practices in partnership with a retailer. Or it could be a network of commodity organizations recruiting specialty crop farmers to quantify reduced emissions and market the resulting products. It may be a project, a farmer partner organization working with universities to test innovative approaches to monitor and verify climate benefits to aid in marketing. It could be all of that or any of it, along with a lot of other ideas and concepts. Now we'll start with a quest for applications for partners who serve producers of all sizes and all methods and all locations, as I said earlier. We'll encourage creativity and innovation, the use of new technologies, the formation of new partnerships, and the development of these pilot projects. And to apply, they need to be able to take part in this Partnership for Climate Smart competition. The first round of applications will be due April 8th. These will fund large projects, and I mean large projects, where the grant funding could be $5 million, $25 million, $50 million. We'll fund a second round of project proposals where applications will be due by May 27th. And this will be for smaller proposals. $250,000, could be something less than $5 million. In total, we're going to make available $1 billion from the Commodity Credit Corporation as authorized by that corporation's charter, because we're authorized to use funds for the expansion of markets for U.S. commodities and the promotion of U.S. exports. Now let me be clear about this. This $1 billion commitment will in no way interfere with our ability to use the Commodity Credit Corporation for other purposes, including funding Farm Bill programs. We are confident we have the resources to be able to do it all. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to be looking for all these projects to meaningfully include small, historically underserved producers. And importantly, this effort is designed to complement and not compete with existing private sector initiatives surrounding climate-smart agriculture. For example, there are a variety of existing platforms today that we know that are working on lowering barriers to entry for farmers, ranchers, and forested landowners to access private carbon markets. Now, this program is not a carbon market program. It's focused on commodity production. And working alongside some of the great activity that we're already seeing out in the market, we're hopeful that we'll see additional adoption of climate-smart practices across all regions of the country and all commodity types, which in turn may allow those producers by themselves or their partner to obtain those private sector markets, another revenue source, if you will, for farmers. Additionally, these pilot projects we expect will work in tandem with the Growing Climate Solutions Act once passed by the House. And this legislation, as I said earlier, underscores the need for action in the aid of development of markets of sustainably produced products by small and mid-sized operations. Now, as groups of farmers and ranchers and producers and foresters voluntarily come together, we can provide the resources to support the investments, reduce the cost for those choosing to embrace these climate-smart practices. In other words, eliminate the financial risk or barrier that may exist today. Now, these efforts will also work alongside our existing Farm Bill conservation programs to provide producers with new opportunities, expanded opportunities, new tools to adopt climate-smart practices. This is exactly what we're doing is we're trying to incentivize the creation of climate-smart commodities that hold higher value in the marketplace, that farmers can generate additional profit from, and capture that value for the farmer. This is about creating domestic markets that will provide American agriculture and forestry with the resources to do what they know to do best, to feed the world while serving as great stewards of our land and water. This is also about positioning American agriculture as a global leader, advancing competitiveness in our markets abroad. We know that export markets will depend on our ability to competitively compete with those who have maybe a different approach to climate-smart agriculture. We need to get there first. We need to be able to say to the world, we have led in this effort in order to maintain and expand those export markets. And I think producers will also find, as they embrace these practices, that they'll also benefit from improved soil health and the productivity that will come from that over time. For far too long in rural America, We've taken products off the land and from the land. We've shipped them someplace else, where opportunity is created someplace else, where wealth is created someplace else. With this opportunity, we now have a chance to change it from an extraction effort to a circular effort. The ability to essentially create climate-smart commodities, an opportunity to convert waste into a wide variety of bio-based materials. I saw some of them today. Hemp in construction material, for example. Those processing facilities can be located right where the crops are being grown. They can be sustainably produced. They can be a higher value. They can create jobs in rural communities. They can increase farm income. They can expand population centers in rural places, taking pressure off our urban centers. They can restore life and vitality in our small towns. That's the opportunity side of this. We just need to understand the opportunity that we have, and we need to fully seize it. We can, with this program, position producers to be part of the solution to climate change. In fact, I believe we can lead the nation in that solution, while at the same time creating enormous economic opportunity in rural places. Whether it's leveraging our conservation programs, restoring our forests, accelerating the development of science-based solutions, investing in clean energy, more, the U.S. Department of Agriculture will continue to be a partner in combating climate change, increasing agricultural productivity, and improving rural America. Before I close, I'd like to say once again thank you to Lincoln University for the opportunity to be here. This university provides, I think, incredible opportunities that engage students in agriculture and cultivates the next generation of leaders. Through the scholarship program that we talked about, Lincoln University also established the David Scott Full Ride Scholarship Program. It's an extension of the 1890 scholarship program, and in this first year, this new program provided full scholarships for, I think, 29 students or so, majoring in agriculture-related sciences. More than a dozen additional students will be funded in year 2. And these scholarships are intended to encourage outstanding students at 1890 institutions to pursue and complete degrees that would lead to a highly skilled food and agricultural work system and workforce. That's David Scott's vision, and he is continuing to work in providing potentially additional resources for this program by asking his friends in Congress to add in another $100 million to this effort. Agriculture. It is such an exciting, but challenging, critical, but dynamic space. It's easy to make the case to young people to get engaged in this. It's at the heart of our fight against climate change. It provides the basic food and fiber we need to survive. It leverages the strong natural resources of our country and enhances and improves them. It allows our great nation to be a food secure nation. Never take that for granted. The ability of America to feed itself. There are a lot of countries in the world today that can't say that. It helps to create enormous flexibility in our economy as we pay so little for the food we eat. It allows us to go out and purchase a lot of other consumer goods that support the jobs that are critical to this economy. So this is an incredibly great time to think anew and to act anew. This is an incredibly great time to elevate the awareness within this great country of the important role that agriculture and forestry plays in all of our lives. I think Lincoln would be proud. He'd be proud of this university that bears his name. I think he'd be proud to know that it was started by veterans of the Civil War. I think he'd be proud to know that it was started in order to give others a chance to be farmers and ranchers and producers. I think he'd be proud to know that we're here today to talk about America being united in an effort to accept another great challenge that not only threatens us, but threatens the entire world, and to see not just the challenge, but the opportunity side. I think he would be pleased that we're thinking anew, that we're acting anew. And I think he would be very pleased that we are doing. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. I'm told that I'm supposed to introduce Yvonne Matthews, who is a Cooperative Extension Associate Administrator, for a little Q&A, and she promised to take be easier. At least that's what I heard. Thank you very much.
Well, let me start by saying thank you. This is an exciting day, exciting ideas to make an interesting way into our future, so thank you. As Secretary Vilsack said, I am Yvonne Matthews. I am the Associate Administrator for Lincoln University Cooperative Extension, and today I am the moderator for this session. I will have a few questions for you, and then we will open the floor to the audience, and the audience will be able to ask a few questions as well. But to the audience, I ask that if the spirit strikes you and you have a question, subdue it just for a moment. Wait until the microphone comes to you, and then you can ask your question. Our microphone bearers are Carol and Dana, okay? So let me start with my first question. Again, I thank you for your inspiring speech. And I also thank you for visiting our students, faculty, and staff today. Based on your experiences with land-grant institutions, especially 1890 institutions like ours, how can we best position ourselves to help the climate-smart agriculture and forestry, both under this new program as well as more broadly?
Well, I think there are a couple of responses to that question. First of all, obviously, it's a traditional role of a land-grant university, an 1890 university, to provide extension. That's an incredibly important component of the land-grant system. Frankly, it's one that is universally, whenever I travel outside the United States, people always want to know about extension. They always want to know how to replicate extension because it's such an incredible tool. So the ability of extension to work with groups in communities to make sure that producers are fully aware of the programs that do exist, the conservation programs, the loan programs, the grant programs. We find that there's not an awareness of all of those programs, and then to be able to assist those producers who aren't familiar with how to go about navigating applications and things of that nature, to provide that technical assistance. We just recently granted $75 million to 20 cooperators to begin that process to reach out to underserved producers, historically underserved producers. And there's going to be another grant wave of grant application process for others who haven't participated in this effort. So I think land grants are a good, solid partner in that effort. So that's number one. Number two, I think this particular program that I announced today, where we're taking $1 billion and providing the opportunity to aggregate large numbers of farmers. There are probably organizations that can aggregate the farmers, but those organizations aren't the kinds of organizations that have the scientists like you have here, and the researchers that can actually use the tools to monitor effectively, to measure effectively, to verify the results. So it seems to me there's an opportunity there as well for land-grant university to be engaged in one or more of these large-scale or smaller scale projects that we're going to fund. And the last thing I would say is, the reality is in the Department of Agriculture, which has about 100,000 employees, 8% of those employees are under the age of 35, which means there are a whole lot of people at USDA that look more like me, they look like the students I talked to today. And so there is a need for us in agriculture across not just the department, but across the entire industry and across all of farming to encourage young people to participate. So we have to figure out strategies to make it easier. We have to figure out strategies to encourage them to find out what the opportunities are. That's why we have scholarship programs, that's why we have fellowships and internships. And so I encourage the land-grant system to better and more fully utilize the opportunities there to be able to encourage young people to see the enormous opportunities that exist.
So your response really segues into my second question. As we said, I come to this conversation with a background in extension. And I'm seeing firsthand that the average age of farmers in the U.S. is increasing. We need to think about forestry and agriculture and foster the next generation of people to grow our food, to make our fuel, to grow our fiber. What advice would you give students like the ones you met earlier today on how to stay involved in agriculture, forestry, and strengthen rural communities?
Well, I think our system has been incredibly effective. The marketplace sent a message to American agriculture when I was first starting practicing law back in the 1970s. That was about production. We wanted more production, we wanted greater efficiency, we wanted to be able to feed ourselves and the world. And boy, our farmers and ranchers really responded to that call. But what we learned in the pandemic is that our system is not as resilient as it needs to be. And for resiliency, sometimes you have to sacrifice a bit of that efficiency. And one way you can do that is by creating local and regional food systems. The opportunity for smaller sized operators not to have to compete in a game that is geared towards, set up for large-scale production commercial agriculture. It's hard because those large-scale facilities have the ability to spread their costs over a much wider area, much more acres and so forth. If you're a smaller-sized operator, how do you compete in a system that rewards size? You compete by creating your own market, and that's a local market. You go to Lincoln University and say, how about I sell what I'm raising, hogs or whatever it might be, to help your cafeteria, or maybe I go to the local school districts in this area, and I independently reach into contract with them to provide supply. Or maybe I get together with a number of other small-sized operators and we aggregate our production into a little food hub. So one way young people can get engaged here is by looking at the opportunities within the local and regional food systems that currently exist and creating greater connection, greater connectivity. Later this year, our department is going to be pretty aggressive in this area as well, because we see this, frankly, as part of the climate strategy. You want to reduce the mileage, you want to reduce the transportation expense associated with getting food to a particular location. That helps, right? So young people can look at ways, entrepreneurial, to create these local and regional food systems. And or they can be producers. The other thing that they can look at is an opportunity to take conventional farming ground and convert it into a higher value purpose. Now, climate smart commodity is a higher value purpose. We're trying to fund that today. But there's also the organic opportunity. And we're going to look for ways in which we can help transition more easily conventional to organic production. We're going to try a few ideas and see if they work. So I think there are a lot of opportunities for young people. But the challenge is they don't understand the vibrancy of agriculture. They think, wow, it's just kind of tractor, combine, where is it? I don't know, it's 1,000 acres. How can I possibly? Well, no, actually, it's a lot of different people. It's also urban agriculture. There's no reason why you have to necessarily be located in a rural area. You can take a community garden opportunity. You can take a vertical. You can take a building and you can convert it into a farm. There are a multitude of innovations now in agriculture. You can take a rooftop or a series of rooftops and create a multitude of crops that local restaurants, local schools, institutional purchasers of food are interested in, or local restaurants or grocery stores. So I think there's just enormous opportunity there. And we at USDA, our website's chock full of information about how to start an urban farm, how to engage in this local and regional food system. And we're going to try to make it a little bit easier, a little bit less complex to understand the opportunities.
Well, let me ask you a question related to that one. You used the word vibrant and attractive. what do we do to really make agriculture seem vibrant and attractive?
Well, I think explaining the science of it, the problem solving, the dynamic nature of it. I remember being at another land-grant university during my first stint as secretary. I was in a lab and I came back out and I went, man, this stuff is great. You guys, there ought to be a TV show about all the stuff you're doing to figure out diseases and illnesses and stuff, like, like CSI. And the guy looked at me and goes, oh, please, don't talk about CSI. I said, why? He said, interesting shows. He said, those shows created such a demand that we had actually to create a school on our campus of criminal and whatever CSI stands for. Well, there's every bit of as exciting stuff going on in the labs that you all have down here. You're solving problems, and you got plants that have been ailing for 6 years, you still keep them alive. I don't know how you do it, but there's a lot of interesting, dynamic stuff. You're trying to grow hemp, and you're trying to say to farmers, grow it, and then we're going to figure out 1,000 ways to use it. Right? We're going to build buildings with it. In fact, we've got to build the next building on campus with it, right? So, when you start thinking about the reach of agriculture, it affects everything. You can get into nutrition, you can get into food hubs, you can get into farming, you can get into marketing. I mean, there's just a whole host of opportunities here for bright young people. So I think we have to do a better job of marketing. That's one last point of this. I'm sure there are farmers in the room today. They got to market themselves a little bit better. I go into a group of farmers and I said, well, what's the case that you make to your second, third, fourth generation? Well, hard work. A lot of taxes, a lot of regulation, the costs are high, no control over the market. All of which is true, right? It's a tough business. But you're trying to sell me on that, as opposed to agriculture, as we deal with climate, has the greatest and most profound and most immediate impact, because you're not going to sequester carbon. With all due respect, you're not going to sequester carbon in urban centers. You're going to sequester it in rural places. That's a gold mine of opportunity. Gold mine of opportunity. Agriculture will lead the country. You may be able to have an electric car or train, or a car or train, but you're going to have a hard time with an electric airplane for a while. So that creates a whole new opportunity of science and problem solving and really important stuff. I mean, the airlines are begging for this. So I think we need to do a better job. I'm hoping that this Climate Smart initiative we launched today, there's a lot of money involved in it, that it captures the imagination of people, and they start talking about it, and they start saying, this is, wow, all the amazing stuff that's going on out there, instead of some of the negative stuff we say. We've got to market it more effectively.
Thank you. My final question is, one of the things I took away from your speech is that not only are producers doing more to protect the environment, but they are also developing new revenue streams while doing so. Can you expand on your earlier comments and talk about the value-added opportunities in this arena?
Absolutely. All right, first value-added opportunity is the notion of a climate smart commodity. So you've got organic, very high value. You've got everything else. There's nothing in between. There's no middle category. That's what this is. It's a middle category. This is the category that allows a producer and groups of producers to go to a General Mills or Kellogg or whoever, food processing company, and say, look, if you want to be able to market to your consumer that the product that they're purchasing is climate smart, friendly, not harming the environment, we know you want to do that. How are you going to do it? You have to have us create that commodity, that product, that basic grain or whatever it is that's going into your product. So we have a system, we'll have a system that will allow them to be very confident that when they purchase from that farmer who's participated in this, they're actually getting a climate smart commodity. They have a higher value proposition with their consumer, fairly. They should have a higher value proposition with farmers. So that's number one. Number two, when you do climate smart practices, there are a lot of industries out there that want to be able to reduce their carbon footprint, but can't, for whatever reason, can't get it down to zero. They can get it down, but they can't get it down to zero. So they have to offset their activity. Well, how do they offset? They come to farmers and say, hey, you're actually, in some cases, you can have negative emissions in a farming operation. You can actually get below zero. So now all of a sudden those farmers are able to say to these industries that need help, you can purchase my excess here. And that's another revenue stream. So that's the second revenue stream. Third revenue stream is part of what's going to happen with this, I believe, is that people are going to start asking the question, well, what do you do with the waste product? We saw, I have a hard time pronouncing Kiwi, yeah. Well, it's the leaves of kiwi. Nobody thought, I never thought about it. Gosh, that's actually, that could be tasty too if you, I guess with garlic and a little oil, anything's gonna taste good. But for people, that's really an amazing opportunity. So it's no longer considered a waste product, it's considered another ingredient or another product. So if you think about conversion of bio waste, agricultural waste, the dairy industry is working right now on a process where they separate the manure. They separate the water and the solids. And the water they reclaim for the operation, which is really important in the West where serious water challenges. But they can also extract from that water, I believe, I'm told, some organic substances that are used in organic farming. So that's an ingredient that can be sold to an industry. Then they've got the solids that are left. Well, they further evaporate the solids to the point they are now pelletized. Well, that pellet can be converted into a whole series of things: fuel, energy, bedding, or fertilizer that can be transported all over the country. And as we look at the costs of fertilizer, as we look at the expense, we're finding with precision agriculture, as you all are working here, that maybe in some areas we may be over-applying. Well, now maybe you don't have to over-apply, because now you've got a third place or fourth place where you send that excess, right? You don't have to put the landfill, you don't have to incur the expense. Maybe you get rid of lagoons, you get rid of all the challenges that they create in the countryside. Now all of a sudden you've got a third element, right? So those are three revenue sources. That's just me. Now, you got really smart people in the room, they could probably figure out a gazillion different ways for revenue streams to be created. But this is important, and the reason it's important is farmers traditionally have, in the Midwest in particular, they grow a crop and they either sell the crop or they feed the crop. And then they thought, well, maybe we can be part of the processing world. So ethanol, biofuels, okay. And we're going to try to give them an opportunity to be part of the processing on the livestock side. But that's very limited, right? And again, it's really structured for larger scale production agriculture. You got to give farmers 3, 4, 5, 6 different ways. So when crop prices are down, maybe waste product is up. When waste product is down, maybe the ecosystem market is going crazy. And so all of a sudden you have diversification of income opportunities. And you're also, by the way, at the same time, making your soil more productive, which means you're going to have higher yields in the future. To me, it's like a really great new opportunity.
You reminded me of something, and it crossed my mind. My daughter, whose name is Rachel, and my goddaughter, named Ebony, standing on the corner in New York City. In fact, it was Staten Island. And a stench rose, and they teased each other for a moment, and Ebony said, I wonder what that is. And Rachel said, it smells like maybe someone's taking some hogs to market. And Ebony said, what, are they rotten? And Rachel said, no, they just smell like hogs. And Ebony said, I've never smelled hogs that were pigs, she said, that smelled like that unless they were rotten in the grocery store. Rachel said, not the supermarket, the market. And they just looked at each other and understood that even though both of them were born in New York City, Rachel was raised in Missouri and understood that. My question is, how do we get climate smart agriculture to mean something to an Ebony, to a child, to a teenager in an urban area?
Well, I think the role that urban agriculture can play is immensely important. We're seeing a lot of interest. We've just announced 17 cities in America where we're going to establish staff and offices that are dedicated to urban agriculture in those cities. And I think when people begin to see the urban agricultural piece of this, they're going to get a different attitude. They're going to start asking questions. They're going to start getting interested. That's one thing. And again, I think the marketing. I think people are going to market. And you're going to go to the grocery store. You're going to see somebody put a label that says climate smart commodity. You go, what is that? Well, here's what it is. Farmer did A, B, C, D, E with QR codes, barcodes, and all of that other stuff with the technology with iPhones. You can tell that consumer a whole lot of information about that. So I think that's one way. I think the other way is this pandemic, I think, has raised the awareness that people are actually cooking more at home. There's been, and that's part of the reason why we had this sort of supply chain glitch, because we were sending 10% of our food to restaurants, and now we're shifting it, sending it to the grocery stores. How you package something in for the restaurant is different than you package it for the grocery store. Most people can't buy 50 pounds of bacon. You buy those cans. So it's taking a while for that adjustment to take place. But that is an indication that people are getting reconnected with their food. And I think if we do this job well, if we educate people about the pilots that are being developed, I think we will see the evidence of the world be a little bit more attuned, and maybe even a little bit more appreciative, and maybe just a little bit less critical about things they don't really know a lot about.
Thank you. We are ready for questions from the floor. I see a question over here.
Pardon? Okay. First, thanks for coming today. I'm Sam Bush from Vilsack. Two things. I want to invite you back at the end of July for our Cole County JC Fair, because if you want to see young people, our FFAs, that they've got their livestock, they do country ham, they do bacon, and we've got probably 15 organizations of FFA in Cole County. And these young people, they want to farm. We have a lot of century-old farms. So this is our next generation of farmers here. So come back in July as our guest, and we'll take you to country ham, breakfast, or let's buy a hog or a cow or something. But number two, we've had the Hong Kong trade delegation here twice in the last 4 years. And both times they have said, we want to buy all your soybeans, we want to buy all your corn. Last time they said we also want to buy all your spirits, meaning alcohol, because we have a lot of soybeans. Farming is our biggest money, in Cole County, and we have a port in our infancy right now that we want to build in the Missouri River, that we can transport the crops and other goods to the markets. And we've been told it's 8 times cheaper to ship soybeans by barge than it is by truck. Plus, it takes those trucks off the road, which cuts down on the smog and the gas and the fumes and everything. So I don't know if there's any money available for ports, but we are aware that farming is very, very important here in Central Missouri. And that's why I'm here today. I think this is wonderful. So thank you.
You bet. Well, I'm a little bit familiar with Central Missouri because my wife's family is from Versailles, Stover area. Her grandparents lived there for many years, and her uncle ran the funeral home in Versailles. So pretty familiar with this area, and certainly very familiar with FFA. And they are just a tremendous group of young people. And they certainly represent a part of the future of agriculture, no question. But we've really got to expand beyond the 500,000 or so of those young people that are in FFA, because we're going to need a whole lot more. We're going to need a whole lot more farmers. And that's why it's important for us to make the case here. On the port issue, I don't know whether the Department of Transportation might have resources for that kind of project, but I will tell you that it is important. And the good thing is that the bipartisan infrastructure bill President Biden signed and pushed does create resources to improve our lock and dam system. And those resources will allow those soybeans to travel down that river, down the Mississippi, and a lot quicker, which will allow us to maintain our edge from an export perspective. One of the reasons we're able to sell a lot of soybeans all over the world is because we sell them, they're a little bit less expensive and they're higher quality. The reason they're less expensive is because it doesn't take as much money for us to get our soybeans to market as it does down in Brazil, for example. And that's an advantage that we'll now be able to keep because of the infrastructure bill, which is a really good thing. It's tough, but, I'll tell you, sir, it's tough when a guy from Missouri tells me that I gotta come down here to get ham. Because I'm from Iowa, and we believe we're the king of breakfast. More eggs and hogs in my state than in your state, I can tell you. So anyway, I look forward to maybe a return trip for the ham.
Hello. Thank you for coming to Vilsack. Appreciate you taking the time to come out and especially come to Lincoln University. I'm proud to be a CAEHS representative for the University of Lincoln University, and I had the pleasure of going to Washington, D.C. Now we're going to have to do Zoom, but that's part of it. Also, I'm a senior policy advisor for Farm Action, and I'm the chairman of the State of Missouri NAACP Agriculture Committee. I was the only state that has an agriculture committee. But to my remarks, you spoke from the heart in 2010 that you'd like to see 100,000 new farmers, and why not have 100,000? And what are we doing to reach that goal? And one of the big issues, the University of Nebraska, I think, did a study, and they found out that the current crop insurance has led to consolidation of a lot of the farms. So we need to be working on consolidation. And this is the question: how does climate smart commodity strategy being implemented increase the number of farmers or the programs within the 2023 Farm Bill that could be focused on developing and help black farmers and other farmers of color?
Okay, let me see if I can, I'm trying to make notes here. I'm just trying to respond to all your questions. Let me start with the crop insurance question first. We just recently announced a micro crop insurance program, which is designed for relatively small farming operations that in the past have not had the opportunity to have crop insurance. They now have an opportunity to have crop insurance, which will make a big difference in terms of people just getting started. There have also been an expansion of crop insurance products and specialty crops. Oftentimes, people who get in the business start with specialty crops. And so now there's a wide array of crop insurance risk management tools for specialty crops, including the NAP program. So there are now risk management tools for small operations. We've actually increased the number of farmers in this country, and I think based on the census. And I think one of the reasons we have is because we're counting better. But I think also that there are young people who are getting into this business. We need to continue to invest resources in land-grant universities and in cooperative and community building organizations to help beginning farmers understand and appreciate, and historically underserved farmers understand and appreciate the programs that are available. So that's the reason why we recently awarded $75 million to 20 organizations and groups that represent historically underserved producers, primarily black farmers, Hispanic farmers, Native American farmers, women. And the goal of these resources is to make sure that they do better technical outreach, more outreach. And the reality is a lot of people don't know what programs they qualify for, and a lot of folks don't know how to actually fill out all of the paperwork that's necessary. And so they end up either not doing it, or they don't do it right, or they don't do it well. They get rejected, and they feel left out. And understand. So we're trying to figure out ways and strategies where we can work more closely with people they trust. You know, I understand and appreciate the history of the department, and it may very well be the whole notion of, hi, I'm from the Department of Agriculture, I'm here to help. And that may not fly in some parts of the country. So, but if you're from a community building organization that says, hi, I'm from the local organization that you do trust, let me help you, then I think we can begin to teach people how to better access the programs. We're also doing an internal review of our programs to make sure that if there are barriers that do exist, application processes that are too complicated, things that don't make sense, language issues, oftentimes they're not translated in the right language. There's a whole series of challenges that we're trying to eliminate. And we are very close to being able to announce the establishment of an equity commission. These will be outside folks taking a look inside. So we're going to get their view of what we need to do different or better. Let's see. But we just recently announced $39 million to beginning farmer programs that are also helping to create that technical access. I think I answered all of your questions, but I may have, the last question, what's the last one that you asked?
Well, we were talking about developing more formal for color, and I did apply for that equity commission. I haven't heard anything back. Are they set the deadline when they're going to announce you all?
It's coming very soon. It's coming very soon. They're going to be, actually, there's going to be a commission, then there's going to be a series of subgroups under the commission that will focus on particular aspects of our operation. We'll start with consumer-facing farm service, rural development. We'll start there, because that's where a lot of the issues have been in the past.
Do we have any other questions?
This is university.
Thank you for coming. Excuse me. My name is Don Sussman. I'm what I would consider to be a small to medium-sized producer in rural Missouri here. And I'm a fourth-generation farmer, and my son farms with me. He was able to take advantage of the young farmer loan to get established. And I've got a 4-year-old grandson that I, God willing, if he wants to go into it, I hope he will be able to as well. Earlier this week, there was in today's world with the social media, and that's the way a lot of people get their news and their information. Earlier this week, the New York Times put out a video that was very scathing to American agriculture and just full of misinformation and just flat out lies. And I was wondering how you can help us to get our story out. I mean, I've been a no-till farmer since '95, and another thing with the carbon credits, it seems like it's geared towards new practices, where with farmers like myself who've been doing good practices or trying to sustain our farm so that it will be available for our next generation. Is there ways that there are programs to help us as well? Thank you.
Kate, raise your hand. You see that young lady right there? If I'm not telling you the truth, I'm giving her permission to say I'm not telling you the truth. Kate, did we not discuss the New York Times issue earlier today? We did. Deeply concerned about it. And the question is, what's the best vehicle for pushing back? Is it a conversation with the New York Times people themselves? Is it a letter? Is it an op-ed piece? We're in the process of trying to figure exactly how to respond to this. But you're going to be, I mean, the reality is you're going to be faced with this, right? That's the beauty of what we announced today. Because it puts agriculture in a much better situation, because we can say now, hey, we've got pilot projects, demonstration projects, billions, hundreds of millions of dollars being used to help farmers do what they are currently doing and what they want to do. And it's going to be happening all over the country. The fact that we have 12 million acres of cover crop, those folks who did that video probably had no idea there's 12 million acres. They have no idea that there's a goal to double that by 2030. They have no idea that farmers in the dairy industry are the only farmers in the dairy industry, along with their Canadian friends, who actually reduced their greenhouse gas emissions over the last 10 or 15 years. Everybody else around the world, including all those good people in Europe, did not. All right? So there's a lot of information that we can get out, and we will get out, but this program that we just announced gives us the opportunity to take the high ground on all this. All right? And I think I said this, and gosh, if I didn't say it, I should have. I'm pretty sure in my remarks, I've mentioned the fact that we're also going to make sure that early adopters can be part of this program, okay? So rest assured that if you can find a way to partner up with a number of producers, like-minded producers in a project, there's no question we're going to be providing resources to you. And eventually, I think over time, what we do is by setting the standard, we make it easier, and I don't think you'll be penalized as an early adopter, we make it easier for farmers to be engaged in these markets. We're not setting up a carbon market, we don't want to be in a carbon market, we want to be able to qualify you for one if you so desire to participate. And that's kind of what we hope will happen here. And it's not just carbon, it's water, it's wildlife, there are a whole series of ecosystem markets out there that we want you to take advantage of. Because the goal here, to get your grandson, you know, in the past, one of the only strategies you had was to get bigger. Well, wouldn't it be nice if you didn't have to get bigger, you just have more profit centers? And that's the goal here, more profit centers, so that you can balance off livestock, grain, whatever you're producing, with ecosystem markets, with agricultural waste going down to the local processing facility, you can turn it into a bunch of stuff and it creates jobs, and maybe your grandson can work at during the summer while he's getting his degree here at Lincoln. You know, I mean, just a whole series of good stuff that can help with this.
Thank you. We have time for 2 more questions, and I see one right here.
Good afternoon. My name is Clement Cotton Mesa. I'm the director for our small farm program. And my question is on land. We know that most of the small young guys coming up, they don't have land for farming. So how would we be able to help them? Because as a director of a small farm, I travel a lot. And my interaction with these young women is that if they rent a land, they might not be able to invest in the land because the land doesn't belong to them. So how do we help in ensuring that this issue of land is addressed? Thank you.
It's a great question, and I'm glad you're asking. And it's one that I don't have an easy answer to, but I tell you, we have a process to try to get the answer. When the American Rescue Plan, which was passed in 2021, that's my alarm. That's not. When the American Rescue Plan was passed in 2021, it contained a provision, section 1006. And in that section, it essentially said it appropriated resources for the Department of Agriculture to work in 3 areas for historically underserved producers. Now, this would include producers of color, but it would also include beginning farmers, veteran farmers. And the question is, how do you get technical access and information to them? How do they know about programs that are available that they could use to potentially get in the business and stay in the business? So that's part of the $75 million that I announced, and then we're going to do another round of grants. There's about $850 million that's left out of that pot that is designed to figure out ways in which we can increase access to land and increase access to markets. Now, the access to markets is probably easier to do because you just, you survey what's out there and you see this grocery store over here, or this restaurant over here, or this school over here as a market opportunity, and you make the connection, farm to school, you make the connection, and all of a sudden the farmer's got a market. So that's a little bit easier. The land issue's a little tougher. It could be something like this. It could be the fact that there are folks who own land who would like to be able to do something for the societal benefit of society. We have an arrangement where we basically, we meaning the USDA or an entity that USDA funds, would go out and say to that landowner, we will pay you a decent rent, an average rent, cash rent, for the use of that land for 10 years. And they, from this grant that they get from USDA, they basically have access to that land. Then they turn around and they lease it to beginning farmers at a much, much, much lower rental rate, one that's more affordable for that beginning farmer. Now this does two things. It gets the farmer on the land. Right? Farmer may need equipment. Well, there's a micro enterprise loan program up to $100,000 that young producers can access. It's a 7-year repayment, low interest rate. So now they use that program to buy the piece of equipment. They've got land, they plant a crop, they get a little crop insurance from this micro crop insurance program. So they've got risk management. They learn, they go to Lincoln University and the experts in extension, and they learn what they need to know about planting whatever it is they're planting. They sell it, they develop a history. Well, that history allows them to go in the FSA office over a couple of years and say, I'm actually experienced now in farming. I've been farming for a number of years. I need a larger loan opportunity for me to be able to expand and actually be able to pay a cash rent at whatever the cash rent base is, or maybe even be able to buy an acre or two to get started. So our goal here with 1006 money is to figure out the pathway, the strategies, the incentives, the inducements that are necessary to create land. The second thing I would say in response to that is the department, the federal government owns a lot of land, and particularly the Defense Department. And the Defense Department's land, by virtue of what they do, they got buffers. They got a lot of land between whatever they're doing on that base and what civilians can access. Well, maybe there's an opportunity for that land around those defense production facilities and defense bases to be utilized for beginning farmers at a rent that is nominal to get them started, to get them a history that allows them to access the regular programs. So I think there are ways to do this, but I don't want to be Pollyannish about this. I don't want to be naive about it. It's not going to be easy, but we're working on it. So that's a couple of ideas.
A final question?
Thank you for the speech. My name is Yes. So I am an assistant professor here in agribusiness. You talk about the USDA may create another label, like climate smart label that will be very similar to the USDA organic. So how actually, my question is how this label will be different from the USDA organic. So how the farmers can be differentiated between these two, and does the USDA will plan to create a similar agency or program like National Organic Program to manage this program or enforce all kinds of standards, enforcement? That's my question. Thank you.
Well, I need to be clear. It's not the USDA that's going to produce a label.
Oh.
It's the marketplace out there that's currently labeling products as climate smart or climate friendly without any real standard or basis for making those determinations, right? Now, they may have a contract with a producer. There may be a third-party certification group that is certifying what the farmer did. Maybe that's how they're able to justify it. But it's kind of the Wild West out there. There's just not a standard. There's not a common definition. So the goal of this program is to try to create that common set of standards that would allow everybody to know precisely what these labels will mean. Our ability to regulate labels is limited only to making sure that they don't misrepresent. Now, I'll give you an example, which is not climate smart, but it's a better example. There are a lot of folks putting product of the U.S. labels on stuff today, and if you look at that as a consumer, you're thinking everything that was done with that product was done in the U.S. Well, maybe not. maybe that beef was raised in Mexico and processed in the US, or maybe it was raised in the US but processed in Canada, or maybe it's a whole set of combination possibilities. So we're now we're doing a survey of consumers to find out what do you think that means, and do you put value on it? And my guess is people do put value on it, and they probably think that everything about that product is done in the US. So if anybody is applying that label that's not complying with that standard, that everything about that product is done in the US, they shouldn't be able to use that label. So what we're envisioning here is creating the standard. Now the standard is going to be different than organic because the standard is determined based on climate smart practices. So there may be a practice where you have to commit to cover crops, you have to commit to drip irrigation, you have to commit to rotational grazing, you have to commit to precision agriculture, a number of commitments, but you're still using some herbicide or pesticide or whatever. Well, that wouldn't qualify you for organic, but it still would qualify you for climate smart because you're using these climate smart practices. We know there are about 45 practices on the farm that we believe have pretty significant value from a greenhouse gas reduction, carbon sequestration, or other biodiversity. If putting a suite of those together, we want to do large-scale demonstration projects to see what the impact is large-scale. It's one thing to do it on 100 acres. You might sequester 10 tons of carbon, right? Well, 10 tons of carbon is not going to cut it. We have to sequester millions, hundreds of tons, right? So we have to have larger aggregation of all of those 10-ton farms to make sure that across 100 farms like that, you get the same result, right? So it's different than organic because it's not quite as strict as organic, but it's embracing specific climate smart practices, which some farmers are currently doing today. Maybe they're not doing all of them, they're doing some of them, but some farmers aren't doing any of them.
Thank you. I thank you for all of those questions. They were thought-provoking, they were rich, and I'm sure they've given us something to think about as well as Secretary Vilsack. And at this time, I offer you the opportunity to have some closing remarks.
Well, let me just take this opportunity to thank all of you for taking time from busy schedules, from classes and from other activities to be here today. I think this is a very, very important moment for American agriculture. I think it does allow us to turn the page. I think it allows us to tell a compelling story that's already been taking place in farms across the country. But by raising it to this level, it gives us the ability to really market what you all are doing. It gives us the opportunity to create new revenue streams, which makes potential agriculture more profitable, which may in turn allow folks to keep the farm and encourage the next generation. We have the equity lens, so we're not going to leave people behind. We want to ensure that small operators are in this chance as well as large-scale operators. So I think it's a really important day, and I've been pressing my team to get to this day since I took this job almost a year ago. And I think when you combine this together with what we're doing on the processing side, we're encouraging more competition by creating more processing capacity with additional resources, and we're going to be announcing a lot more of that later this month. And you combine it with the local and regional food system efforts, you're going to see more opportunity, you're going to see a more resilient food system, and I think you're going to see hopefully a better understanding on the part of most Americans about the incredible system we have, and more appreciative than what we saw in New York Times on Sunday. So again, thank you very much, President. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Really pleased with what you all are doing, and look forward to continued conversation.
Secretary Vilsack will have time to mingle and go and talk to the press, but in the meantime, join me in thanking him very much for his presentation, for his questions and answers. Thank you.